the 76ers in last season's Eastern Conference Finals. It was Game 7 of the series that started the Ben Simmons saga in Philadelphia. Simmons remains out of the Sixers lineup as he is mentally unable to play. And Simmons was at Philadelphia's Shooteround yesterday ahead of their win versus the Pistons. The Sixers, though, are 3-2 without him. So for more on Ben Simmons, we're joined now by ESPN NBA reporter Tim Bontemps. Tim, Simmons was at Shootaround yesterday. Are we any closer to seeing him return to action on the court?
No, Malik, I don't think we are. You know, he obviously was at Shootaround, like you said, yesterday, and he was at the facility the past few days before that, as Philadelphia was in Oklahoma City and then in New York for games against the Thunder and the Knicks earlier this week. But as of now, Ben Simmons is still out indefinitely for personal reasons, and it seems like that's going to be the case going forward. Now, as you said, the Sixers are playing the Atlanta Hawks tomorrow. It would be rather incredible if Ben Simmons was making his debut this season in that game, given that this all started, like you said, when he passed up that dunk with 3.5 minutes to go in Game 7 against the Hawks, and Philadelphia ultimately went on to lose that game and the series. But for as juicy of a storyline as that would be, I don't think we're going to get it tomorrow, and we're still in sort of a holding pattern waiting to see when or if Ben Simmons is going to be back on the court with his teammates.
Okay, interesting. So Joel Embiid, he has been hobbled since the opener, but did go for 30 and 18 last night. How is his knee feeling today?
I mean, look, Malika, this is kind of an annual thing with Joel Embiid, right? He tends to be questionable and a game-time decision for a lot of games, and that's been the case for each of the past 4 games Philadelphia has played. Ever since the opening quarter of the season in New Orleans, when he banged into Jonas Valanciunas' knee. Now, you see on this play here, when he drove to the rim and did that pump fake and dunk last night, he grimaced coming back down the court. And he's talked at times about how this is something he's going to have to play through. Now, obviously, with Ben Simmons already out, Philadelphia needs Joel Embiid playing at an MVP level like he was against the Pistons for them to win games. But as Joel himself said last night, you know, if they're struggling to beat a team like the Pistons, they're going to have a lot of trouble beating teams like the Knicks, who obviously blew them out the other day, and a team like the Hawks, who they're trying to compete with in the playoff picture tomorrow at home. So this is something they're going to have to monitor going forward, and his health is obviously critical to their chances of trying to survive without Ben.
Absolutely early days, but they need to be playing the long game here. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. The Sixers host the Hawks tomorrow. So here are the Eastern standings through the first 10 days of the season. Some surprising teams. The top early on, the Knicks, the Hornets, the Bulls, the Wizards. Perk, you wanted to talk about the Wizards? Just all with one loss for all of them. And teams like the Sixers and Nets outside of the top 8. What makes you guys think of that? What do you think?
Look at the top 3, Knicks, Hornets, and Bulls. And I love that you can improve in the offseason, really work individually as a player, but collectively get good pieces. That surprises me, but in a good way. Tears of joy, right?
You know what I like about it is that all these teams, right, when you look at a team like the Wizards and you look at a team like the Cavaliers, nobody talked about them, including myself, right? And the Wizards, they have a team. They have a team, and they playing with passion. And a lot of them playing with a chip on their shoulder.
Well, and you know it can get a little bit dangerous when people are playing with a chip on their shoulder. And speaking of, coming up, the reigning rookie of the night in Atlanta's loss to the Wizards last night, 15 points on 17 shots and just 3 free throw attempts. And you can see here several examples of calls he's used to getting prior to this season. He's averaging just over 4 free throws a game, which is down from close to 9 last season. So here's Trae Young after the game talking about that adjustment to the new rule.
You got to fight through it and play through it. I mean, obviously you're not going to change refs as much as some of us would like, but I mean, I feel like we gotta adjust just like they gotta adjust. So we gotta figure it out. I don't want to get fined too much, but this is frustrating.
Trae Young has seen his free throw attempts decrease by more than 4 per game compared to last season. He's tied with James Harden for the most in the league, and Bradley Beal has also seen his attempts go down significantly. So Trae Young is channeling his inner Marshawn Lynch. Zach, does Trae have a point?
Trae has a point. Like, first, let's zoom out. Overall, this is super good news for the NBA, right? Like, there was a game, Heat Nets the other day. James Harden drove, hooked Bam Adebayo's arm, and then flailed around and dropped the ball, and no call. And when there was no call, a single tear of joy just streamed down my face. I was so happy. But Trey is a little bit of a different case. Trey has a lot of stuff that looks like he's trying to get fouls. That's just real basketball. Like when he goes around a screen, he likes to slow down. And sometimes guys run into him. That's not his fault. He's slowing down to read the floor, see what defender makes a mistake, see what passes open up, or see if he's to shoot his floater. That's real basketball. If you run into him from behind, that's a foul. That's your fault. Some of the other stuff needs to be legislated out of the game. Look, there are going to be hiccups. It's possible that officials are going overboard right now, but overall, this is definitely good for the NBA, and the players are just going to have to adjust.
What do you think, Perk?
I mean, look, I love the rule change, right? I think it's great for basketball. Now the older generation they don't have a reason to call us soft. The league is getting back to that point. But look, Zach, so what you was trying to describe is Trae Young in the pick and roll is keeping the guy on his hip, snaking action or whatever the case may be. But sometimes he is causing these fouls. And look, I'm a huge fan of Trae Young, right? I'm a huge fan of him. But some of these calls are just not fouls, and he's just going to have to fight through it, which he's doing a great job of doing. It's not like he's having a drop-off like James Harden. The man is still putting up 26, 27 points a night, so he'll be fine. I mean, he was just frustrated that, they took an L last night. The Wiz are for real right now.
What are you seeing there, Chiney?
And whereas, James Harden might be still dealing with that lingering hamstring and Trae Young is coming in fresh. Okay, no, I know, but hamstrings are difficult. We know this, Perk, all right? I see this as normal evolution, right? Because the last few years we've been talking about how most teams and the league overall are scoring so many points, and that's largely due to these rule changes that protect the shooters. Now, as posts, we felt like we've been just put in a box. The hot stove rule was very difficult. You know that, Perk, right? We were taught, in our preseason meetings, you touch a perimeter defender outside of three or outside of the paint once, you can't touch them again until they hit the paint. That made it almost impossible to defend. As a post player, I'd switch out there and I'm like, man, I touch you once just to see where you're at, and now I can't touch you at all again. I think this rule is just trying to bring a little bit more into balance.
Right. So you said one tier or two tiers like Zach when you saw this start to.
Zach is not shedding no damn tears.
I know.
I mean, you not. Just stop it, Zach. You're not crying over nothing, okay?
Zach.
Of joy, tears of joy. That's what I'm saying. Like the game, there was no bogus foul. It just, the game kept going. There was no call, and James Harden was left to flail around to nobody. It was great.
Well, and that's what this rule intended to do. Zach, as you know, when the league explained this to reporters, it was to try to balance out, they said, the competitiveness on offense and defense. The new rules are having an impact across the league this season. Teams are averaging just 20 free throw attempts per game thus far, which would be the fewest in any season in NBA history. But it's time for Teen Goals, brought to you by NerdWallet Atlanta.
And James Harden was left to flail around to nobody. It was great.
Well, and that's what this rule intended to do. Zach, as you know, when the league explained this to reporters, it was to try to balance out, they said, the competitiveness on offense and defense. The new rules are having an impact across the league this season. Teams are averaging just 20 free throw attempts per game thus far, which would be the fewest in any season in NBA history. But it's time for Teen Goals, brought to you by NerdWallet Atlanta.